connected.
Hello cosplayers, crafters and creative enthusiasts. Welcome to Create, your channel for everything creative, crafting and cosplay related. My name is Raven Miller from White Raven Cosplay. Some of you might know me from the last years for my work with realistic cosplay dolls. And I'm very proud to presenting you today a project that has been a real project from the heart for me personally. It has been a dream come true. It is the biggest doll that I've ever made so far. It's a really, really unique project that I'll hope you enjoy as much as I do. It will be a very long journey, but I really hope and I'm sure it will be worth it. What we'll be doing here today are the very first steps of crafting a realistic life-size doll of your favorite hero from Final Fantasy XV, Noctis Lucis Calum. And I've brought you today some of the steps that I've already prepared at home, because you have to start from somewhere, right? So how do we start such a huge project? I mean, this is really overwhelming at first. So you really need to break down to the possibilities that you have as a cosplayer and materials that you can use. And of course, as always, this is just my my personal way of doing things. There's no right or wrong, and I'm sure other, cosplayers and crafters will have their own approach, and this is fine in their own right. So what I'll be showing you today is my personal way, how I will do it. Thank you. Yes, to be honest, I'm a little bit nervous because it's the very first live stream, but I'm really excited because I really, wanted to use this medium to show you how much actual work is behind a project. Because normally all you see is the final pictures and my final storyboards that I create about all those dolls and the stories behind. And I had the feeling there's always something missing. You never see all those amazing steps. So with TeamSpeak now, I finally, got the opportunity of showing you what's going on behind the scenes. And I mean, that's actually 80% of my work. So yeah, please be with me today and, have some patience and forgive me for being a little bit nervous. I hope you're too. So, yeah, what it will look like in the end should be something similar to the cosplay work that I just finished. And this is actually a little realistic baby elf. And you can see all the details, the veinings, the capillaries, the realistic hair. And let's hope that we'll be able, in the end, to create something similar and lifelike with a life-size Noctis. Not as a baby. I've done this before. And I did it 2 years ago and it was a huge success. This time I want to really go for, the Noctis that we see in the actual game, the kid, the 7-year-old Noctis. So I'm starting today with the imprints that I've taken from a real child. Actually, it's a 5-year-old boy, and you can see that they look like this. So this is what we'll be starting with. And when you get them, hi. Wesens Costumes, nice to meet you here. I'm so glad to have you by my side. She's actually a very good friend of mine, and she's cosplayed with me in some cool projects. So, if you're taking the first imprints, people have asked me about this. Of course, it never comes out perfect like this in the beginning. You have some flaws that you really need to correct, and sometimes you end up with this, which is not really useful. So actually it took us 3 to 4 times and tries to get the kind of imprints that we, can use for our crafting. And what I will do is I will just start smoothing the surface, and I will do this with some simple tools. It's just modeling tools for polymer clay. And I have a whole collection here in my private lucky charm. This is handmade by Wesens Costumes, by the way. I really love it. It's super, super cute. And all of my, you know, tools fit in there perfectly. So I'm selecting one that gives me a sharp surface, but is not too, you know, too raw for my purposes. And what I will do now is just, you know, see where the little bumps are in the alabaster. This is made of alabaster. And I'll just start gently scratching the surface. And as you probably hear, English is not my mother tongue, so please bear with me. Always trying my best here. So let's see. And I personally think, you know, crafting streams like this are the perfect opportunity for you to ask me questions. And yeah, so I can answer you, give you tips, and of course show you how long certain steps that look so short actually really take. So, okay, Seraph asked me if you need an education to do this. That's actually a very good question. It depends. I was always, you know, very active in crafting, and I'm a self-taught artist, but not many artists, you know, stay self-taught artists. At some point, I think it's really necessary to book some courses and get some feedback from some professionals so they can give you, you know, valuable insights and some techniques that you might have missed out. And that's what I did when it came to doll crafting. I did the basics myself. And of course, I learned from some of the best artists in my country, which was a great honor and, you know, a great opportunity for me. And I'm still very thankful for what they taught me. Litters asked me, how long does it take to craft a doll? Well, actually, for a baby doll, like the little elf that you have just seen, it usually takes up to 3 months because there is so much work to be done. You need to craft and paint a realistic three-dimensional skin structure with blood flow and veining and capillaries. And obviously, if you do it in a rush, you will always see it. The paintings will not look natural, so you need the time. And also, what many people fail to recognize often is when they start out with dolls, for painting you need broad daylight. You really need a good lighting to see all the details. So all in all, I would say 3 months for a baby doll, and Noctis is so much bigger. As I said, this will be a first time for me, as it will be a first time for you here. I hope, you know, you stick with me and we create Noctis together. And I'm not sure how long it will take. Of course, I will finish some of the time-consuming steps at home, so you don't have to worry about that. I will craft at home as well for you and prepare some steps for you. But I hope we will finish him in a few months, but I can't really say for sure right now how long it will take. It will depend a little on how far we can come here. So I hope that maybe you can see that coming from the fact that this is, you know, alabaster's liquid at first, you always have this little holes inside your scalp, which is what you definitely do not want if you reproduce it later in silicone, because what we want to end with is a movie-like doll that is made of silicone partially with a clothed body, and it will look and feel and, you know, behave like a real doll, just like in a Hollywood film movie basically. So we do not want these flaws in our master form. And I will show you in a few minutes how to fix this. And to be honest, this is also great for showing you how to draw, how fine the line sometimes is between correcting mistakes and not losing so many valuable details in the process, because this is a real foot. There are those amazing, amazing details that I really do not want to destroy. So I need to be careful not to take too much of the natural structure away. And as always, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, it is a complicated process, and it's breaking down to many, many different steps, and this is one of the reasons why, of course, I'm also a little nervous doing this, because it's the first time for me. I've never crafted such a big size doll. The biggest doll that I did was last year, a Kitze Shomaru. Sorry, it was Sephiroth, actually, from Final Fantasy VII. They sound so similar. And he was 1 meter in total. This one will be much, much bigger. But let's hope for the best. And I think we are on a good path of doing this. Sometimes your fingertips are the best tools for deciding if a surface, you know, is ready or if it needs some refinement. I also mostly use my own fingers for sculpting and crafting the head. And I know people do it differently. I know there are also doll crafters who are really, you know, fixated on using special tools. I just have my standard equipment here and I use whatever I see fit. So feel free, as a crafter, as always, to follow your gut instinct and, you know, get to know your tools and use what you feel comfortable for. And we can already see some progress here. This is really nice. I love this. Love those moments when you realize it's going into the right direction. Hi Funky! Nice to meet you here. Hope you're well. So basically, so many people have asked me how and why I started with crafting dolls for cosplay. I know most people are very focused on doing armory and, you know, swords and weapons and all that stuff. And of course I've started out as everybody else. I did a few anime things and these and that basically, and suddenly it all started, the doll making, it all started with an idea that I had in my mind a very long time. I'm a huge fan of the series Inuyasha. I don't know if you guys still know Inuyasha. I think it's one of the yeah, most famous animes in TV at my time when I was a kid. So of course Inuyasha had a huge impact and always had been in his my love for Inuyasha had always had a huge impact on my works. So I had those idea that we don't really know so much about his childhood, and I've seen so many content created with him as an adult, and then suddenly I got the idea, you know, I would love to dig deeper in this character, and especially after seeing the Source of an Honorable Ruler scene, I was really hooked, and I thought, you know, you could tell a whole new story in anime just about the parents, basically, how they get to know each other and stuff, and how Inuyasha came to life, you know, and what his first years with his mother were like, and all this. So I crafted my very first doll, Baby Inuyasha, 2 years ago, and I still remember going on the first con. It was totally, I don't know how to describe it. It was totally strange because I thought that people would, you know, look at me and say, you know, there's this cosplayer and she has a little baby with her. Oh, it's not a baby, it's a doll and it looks lifelike. It's creepy. But it wasn't like that at all. I really, you know, got overwhelmed by all the positive feedback that people had, and they recognized Inuyasha right away, and they were just so excited as I was, you know, seeing the favorite character from a totally new perspective, and suddenly having, you know, a door opener, a mental kick into a whole new world of their favorite character. And that's what I realized on that day, and it has hooked me ever since. And I've done many other works, also from Inuyasha and from the Final Fantasy fandom. And I did craft Baby Noctis 2 years ago. That's what he looks like. And that's the original for comparison. So yeah, my work with Aulia as his mother, you know, got very good feedback in the scene, and so of course, naturally, I always wanted to craft the bigger one as well, and yeah, finally we are here. Yeah, the funny thing is that many people generally tend not to like dolls and think they are, you know, creepy, but when they see my dolls and hold them for the first time, they, you know, usually change their mind, and it's really fascinating because those dolls that I create were usually in the very essence used for therapeutic reasons. They were used for, you know, women who had lost their children. They were also used, and are still used in US, by the way, for people suffering from depression and Alzheimer's, because they found out that the way this doll is created with the life-like, you know, painting, the real hair, they feel they are weighted like a real child, they feel like a real child, they sometimes even smell like a real child, some of them even have a heartbeat mechanism. All of this tricks your body. Your body doesn't realize it's a doll. When you hold it, the heart pressure goes down on most people, even on male cosplayers. So that was also something that I never expected, and that took me totally by surprise, and yeah, my colleagues as well, to see that those dolls really have a therapeutic effect. And I just took it one step further. Instead of, you know, crafting an anonymous real child, I thought about, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have your favorite character in his adorable child form and being able to cosplay as his childhood friend and or parent or antagonist or whatever? You can create suddenly so much more valuable content. It really opens a whole new world of possibilities for cosplayers, and that is what made me so happy. And I think that was the greatest discovery that I made, that those dolls are used best, you know, in combination with other cosplayers, in collaboration projects, and they are also offering a chance for others to create their own unique content with those dolls. So it's not something, you know, that you craft like a sword and you keep it for yourself, but something that you can share. Also at the con, people want to approach you and see this doll, and they want to handle it. And whenever I go on a convention with little Noctis, they want to take pictures with a little Prince of Light, and it's really an emotional and social thing. And yeah, that really keeps me hanging on still, and my passion for crafting dolls is still unbroken, because I found this such a nice way to get in contact with other people and sometimes even making people stay a little bit better. Yeah, I'll gladly show you the little elf again, but right now we are doing live crafting here and I'm a crafter, not a model, so my hands are dirty and this doll is really valuable. So once I clean my hands, I'll show you little elven prince again. So I think we've made some good progress so far. What I will do now is show you how to fix this nasty little holes that we definitely do not want to have here. I mix some of the alabaster with water. Keep in mind that depending on your water temperature, it might need some more or less time to cure. Cold water always has a longer curing time than hot water. And I definitely do not want it too watery. I want the consistency like a pudding or so. And I definitely do not need much of it, so do not waste your materials. And I think I'll go for this one, spatula, like tool. And as you can see, I will fix the holes by gently, you know, filling them up and letting it dry. By the way, for all of those who just joined the channel, this is Create, your channel for everything crafting and creative and cosplay related. I'm Raven Miller, I'm a cosplay and crafter for over 10 years. I'm specialized in creating life-size movie dolls, and what we are crafting today is a life-size Noctis doll in the size that you actually play in the game, or approximately 7 years old. And as every journey starts, you know, with small steps, we're starting with his feet today, so stay tuned. And maybe as time progresses, I can show you how to start working on the head, which I'm sure is a very interesting part for you to see. I find this whole crafting process really a magic journey, because it starts out with, you know, almost nothing, and especially with a head. You start up with some aluminium foil and some polymer clay, and then over time you create a life-like face with a real, you know, expression on the face. And yeah, that's the coolest moment, when you finally realize your character for the very, very first time. So, as you see, I'm taking my time here, but it's really necessary. We cannot rush here, because you will see it afterwards in the overall quality of the doll. Sometimes I just use my fingers to gently, you know, working the materials into the holes and smoothen out the edges. Saves me some work for later. Let's see. I think I'm pretty confident with that one so far. But still some hand and feet to go. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you like my voice. It's not easy, to be honest, you know, speaking in English, since it's not my mother tongue. So if I'm doing some grammatical mistakes, I sincerely apologize for it. But I'm sure you'll understand me just fine. And just like you, join me here. You will see that, you know, you and I as a community will improve also in communication over the next episodes and go together on this epic journey here. And yes, for those of you who wonder, I'm located in Munich, Germany. And I can be found on the most of the German conventions. Next one that I'll visiting will be the Konichi. And I hope that I'll be ready for taking the little elf boy with me. If my other costume finishes in time. There's always so much work to do and so few time. Because, of course, real life also, you know, takes its time. And the daily job also demands some time, but I'll try my best. And I hope that some of you can see them in person. And that's also something that I really enjoy, that I can bring my craftings out into the world for the people to see, so they really see all the details and they see that my work is not photoshopped. And also having the opportunity to show you live and demonstrate how I craft a sculpt, that, you know, this is not a fake, that I don't, you know, buy this head somewhere, but that it, you know, just slowly evolves out of my own hands and out of my mind. And yeah, this is so much better than just showing, you know, some progress pictures. I think it really makes this whole crafting so much more alive. So okay, so as you see, I think there's a huge difference to the raw form that you get out of the mold. The first mold for doing this master, by the way, for those who wonder, is made of alginate in English. And it's a one-time solution, sadly. It is destroyed once you put out your imprint. But honestly, it's cheap, it's not expensive, and for those of you who just want to, you know, get into the hobby and get into crafting and molding, it's a perfect opportunity. Just take your hand and then make some modifications, for example, for, I don't know, some X-Men mutations. I remember Nightcrawler has this cool hands. You can basically, you know, craft what you need over the master form, and you can modify it in any way you want, and then you can make another mold, which I will show you in the next tutorials, and then you can, you know, pour it in silicone and make everything out of it, from a solid form like this up to a glove that you can wear on a con for your costume. You can even do modifications for your face, so that will be something for a future episode. But right now, let's, you know, lay this aside for drying and get one of my hands. And as you see, I've got quite some of them here, and I've already worked on them to save some time. This is what the hand looks like. This is so super cute. And actually there's much more work to do on this one, because we sadly lost all the details on the nails. That can happen. It's just, you know, real life and crafting. And I'll do my best to recreate those nails and all the details for you. I know it's, you know, kind of funny to think about the end when you just started with this project, but I don't know what's in your mind when you're starting a project. I always, you know, have my final goal in mind as a motivation, and I really can't wait to see this doll finished and taking it on a convention, preferably with a Regis cosplayer, and then see how people react when they see what we created. So I'm really, really looking forward to see people's reaction, especially since this Noctis will be a sleeping one. I've decided for a closed-eyed option because of the famous picture of Regis and Noctis that we all saw, which is also imprinted on the main game. This is what I'm aiming for. Of course, I really love the open-eyed dolls, but I found out that sleeping or closed-eyed dolls are even more realistic when it comes to tricking people. So I don't know, if you have some cool ideas what we, you know, which events we should attempt with Noctis once he's finished, then definitely let me know and we'll think about it, what we can do, and maybe prank some people. Actually, what we are crafting here has never been done in cosplay before, ever. I mean, I was the pioneer of bringing realistic dolls into the cosplay world, and I had some really funny stories and events at the beginning, honestly. One of them was so funny that I just need to share it here. My friends already know, so I'm sorry guys, you have to hear it again, but it's really true. So when I first started out crafting them and I published the first cosplay pictures with my baby dolls in the internet, I got a whole shitstorm of comments from 2 or 3 middle-aged ladies who were really enraged. They PM'd me about about how I can be such a bad person to cover my baby, my newborn, in makeup and, you know, make photo shootings with it. And honestly, my skills were so basic at the time that I never ever, you know, expected that someone would actually take baby Inuyasha and Sesshomaru for a real doll, but they did. So I got some PMs. They would report me to, you know, the authorities for child abuse and whatever. And after reading this, my first reaction was, I was really, you know, actually, yeah, impressed that they took the amount of time to let me know that, you know, they worried about child welfare. But on the other hand, I was very, you know, happy to let them know that these are not actually real dolls and real children, but dolls. So to avoid such complications, in the future posts, I always posted in really, really big, you know, letters like, please note, this is not a real child, it's a doll. And I thought to myself, hey, if she takes it for a real child, then maybe there is some potential in the future actually creating dolls with my skills over time as I improve, that people would mistake for real children. So okay, silicone. That's, you know, using the right silicone is a science, and it always depends from project to project. We will use for Noctis a firmer type of silicone, but I'll definitely come into that later because it's much too early at this stage to, you know, talk about that, but I'll definitely go into detail once we reach this stage. So as a general information, keep in mind, if you want to work with silicone, It's very expensive, it's very sensitive, so much can go wrong if you really don't plan on, you know, working with silicone on a long term. Then stay away from big projects in the beginning. I don't say that you shouldn't try doing silicone, please do so. And absolutely try, but start with something small, something easy, you know, something that doesn't rob your bank account, because, you know, a container of this size approximately is around several €100 at least. So for a bigger project like Noctis, you want a certain firmness, so we will definitely go for a harder silicone than, for example, if I would craft a mini-sized doll, I definitely would go for a softer type of silicone. So as you see, you always need to keep in mind what project you want and which effect you want to achieve. If you want to have some, you know, smaller pieces, I don't know, for props, for armories, for your face that you need to be firm, then of course, again, your favorite choice will be a firmer material. So that being said, there are many different types of silicone for almost everybody's needs. And just start small and make your first experiences with molding and silicone pouring, because it's not easy. And your biggest enemy are air bubbles, actually, because it will ruin the whole result. And luckily, in this in my crafting space here, we'll have the technology to avoid that. And I'm really happy and looking forward to show you that in a later episode. This will look like a chemistry laboratory here. Really cool. I'm excited already to show you that. But for now, I have to earn my prize and start working here on perfecting my master form. Okay, so this is already cured, so we need to take some new mixture. Oh, and by the way, guys, for those of you who have seen the Brotherhood anime of Final Fantasy 15 and played the game, let me know what are your opinions and thoughts about young Noctis. What, you know, do you think is still missing in his history? What scenes would you like to see in the future? I'm really curious, because Noctis and his early years have been part of my cosplay journey now for the past year at least. And of course, I have my own opinions and thoughts, but I'm always happy to hear yours and, you know, get inspired and talk with you about what you personally would love to see happen. I personally have to say, after watching the anime and playing the main game, I was a little disappointed that we do not know anything at all about Noctis' mother. And I mean, besides being one of the most important persons in his life, because she literally brought him into this world, she was for sure, as the queen of the kingdom, the most powerful woman of her time. So I remember running around as Noctis in your own home, in your castle, and start wondering why there's not a single picture of your mom somewhere. I was really feeling sorry for Noctis. It was like she never even existed. And it was just in the books then that I read that her name was actually Aulea and she was Reach's childhood friend, which in the end, you know, inspired me to craft baby Noctis and cosplaying as his mother Aulea, and yeah, evolving my own personally inspired mini stories around her. And I was really surprised that I actually seemed to hit a nerve within the community, that so many people were suddenly starting to wonder, who is this woman and what's her history? And, you know, I mean, she didn't live for so long, but at least she had some time in the kingdom and some role to play. So I think still today I'm really looking out for a future DLC, and actually in my little heart I hope that we'll learn some more about her and Noctis' early years, and maybe if we are lucky she will not die right at birth, but at least have some weeks or months with her son, so that we, you know, get to learn her character a little bit better and find out what actually got her killed and what, you know, her relationship was, not only to her husband and to her son. I'm sure she loved them dearly, but also to other characters in the kingdom, maybe side characters, maybe Gladys' father. He was, you know, a bodyguard and Reach's good friend. I'm sure he knew her, at least to some extent. Maybe he was the bodyguard, we never know. As I said, bringing the early chapters of life into a known character, it suddenly opens so many doors, so many possibilities to be creative and, you know, start thinking what could have been. And I think personally, as seen in Horizon Zero Dawn, for example, it's just a perfect example. Knowing something about the early years about a character, it really adds so much depth. I'm sorry, English is not my mother tongue. It adds so much detail into a character, and it's easier for the game player, at least for me as a woman, to identify with the character I'm playing. Okay, and sometimes when you approach problems like this, that there's really, you know, a lot of material missing, you just need to be creative. I'm using my little spoon here, and I will let this dry first before taking any further steps. But now, you know, I've added some material. And of course, what I can't save on details, I have to recreate in the end. So, let me know, guys, if I should continue working on hands and feet, or if you want to see some sculpting of the head. So, for all of those who just joined this channel, this is Create, your channel for everything creative, crafting and cosplay related. My name is Raven Miller. I'm a cosplay and crafter for the last 10 years, and I'm happy to craft with you today a life-size Noctis doll from Final Fantasy 15. So what I would like to do right now is to try to clean my hands and switch over to another part of doll crafting, and I'm sure this is the part that, you know, is really interesting and exciting for you to see, and that some of, you know, the people who come from my page have been waiting for, because this is the part where really, you know, the most dramatic changes take place. What you see here is the the base of the sculpt. This is what Noctis looks like in the beginning, and as you see, this is no fake, this is just pure aluminium foil, a little wire, and I, of course, to save me some time and for reference purposes, I have already, you know, crafted it in the approximate shape of a skull. We don't need to be perfect here, it just has to be raw. That's totally fine. So if you see the comparison, it's really important to keep the anatomy of a child in mind when you create life-size dolls, because the scalp of a baby compared to its hand and feet has a totally difference than a 7-year-old child. So what we are doing today is we start with what I already created, and I really waited for this moment for the stream to begin so that you can see there is no Photoshop, nothing fancy going on here in terms of tricking. This is just plain old skills, and what we will use today is monster clay. It's a clay that has been warmed and that, you know, changes its consistency depending on the temperature. So let's hope it is still not too firm, but not too... Ah, okay, that's perfect. As you see, it has now the consistency of pudding, which is perfect for our purposes. We want to carefully start to add mass on our object on the head. This is what we will doing first. You don't, you know, go... This is what beginners actually do wrong when they start sculpting. They are going over the details again and again, and they got lost in the process. So what we will do today is we will just, you know, add the basic anatomical structures, and then when we are finished with this, we will go in for details, because otherwise we will destroy what we just built up, and that's not, you know, a very motivative thing for a crafter to see. So don't worry, this is just... I know the clay is in a very dark brown tone, but we will use this model to make a mold out of it, and then we will pour it in silicone, so the final color will be a light flesh tone. And as you see, warming up the material really gave me a nice opportunity to work much faster, because the natural consistency is much harder at room temperature, which means it is also much more stressing for, you know, my muscles and the tensions in the arms. And here we come to a very important point, which is working safety. Please, please, all your crafters and cosplayers out there, take care of yourself. You know, safety always comes first, and before you actually ruin your precious health and are not able to craft any longer, you know, take your time to read the safety instructions always, and in my case, you know, just take care and prepare that some steps go, you know, more smoother for your own health. Because if I would, you know, break this hard clay down in room temperature, it will put so much stress on all these areas here anatomically that I'm not sure I can, you know, start crafting next week, and that's what I really do not want. So it's one of the easiest thing to, you know, take care of that by just warming up your monster clay. This is why I love monster clay and prefer it over other clays. You can warm it up actually in the microwave, which is really cool. But you need to be careful. Once it gets too hot, it gets too fluid, and you can actually burn yourself. So, of course, you don't want that as well. But you can see how I'm totally amazed how quick I can add materials on the scalp. Because for some other scalps, for smaller scalps, I use another polymer clay, which is baked in the oven. This one will stay, you know, flexible, and you can reuse it after you're done. But for other purposes, actually, I want my clay to be hard, so I used other clay that hardens in the oven. But for the same step that I did here, with the other clay, which is really hard, I would need 3 hours. So that's really cool. Noctis is watching you. Okay, as you can see, inside the pot, the core temperature of the pot of the mass is higher than, you know, at the edges, so I have to be really careful not to burn myself here, actually. And the good thing, again, about monster clay is that once it has cooled down to a temperature that you can handle, it doesn't stick to your fingers, which is really nice. And because it is so smooth and flexible, I do not need to put much pressure on my aluminium foil base. And that means that I do not destroy it, which is also a point that you should really watch out when you're working with a basis of aluminium foil. Do not, you know, put so much pressure on it, putting clay on, that in the end it, you know, the form will change and you don't notice. So, because this is a sleeping Noctis, I will not insert any eyes normally. I do insert glass eyes here. So I have, you know, right from the start, the eyes sitting deep into the skull, and then I can work my way around it and add the flesh masses that supports the scalp. This is like anatomy. That's really, really cool. And it doesn't have to be smooth and perfect right now. It's just important that we, you know, slowly getting an even first undercoat over what we created with aluminium foil. By the way, Monster Clay is available in 3 different soften stages. How can I say that in English? It's available in soft, medium, and hard. And I personally have chosen the medium because it's still hard enough to give me, you know, the opportunity to work on it with my tools without, you know, crumbling under my fingers all the time. But on the other hand, it is also soft enough to for me to handle because as I said, your biggest problem as a crafter is, you know, putting too much pressure on your tensions, on your hands, and ruin your health. So this is what we really want to avoid here. I now just try to mix some of the edges, which is cooled down already, with the more fluid particles in the middle to get an even. Yeah. As you can see, it's still sticky because it's too warm. That's the sign for me that it's still too warm. But it will cool down. And in a few seconds it will be ready to use. And you see it's not sticky at all. I really love this. It's really cool. I've worked with monster clay before, but not on such a big object, and I was concerned that we wouldn't make any progress here, but now I see that my worries were, you know, didn't came true, so makes me happy. Of course, in this stage right now it looks nothing like Noctis, but don't worry, this is just the first step, and sculpts are not born overnight, so as I said, I first focus on the overall appearance, but of course I'm taking the chance of adding some basic anatomical structures, like the nose, for example, so that I have some guidelines that help me to decide where I later put my materials, my layers and materials. So on some areas, like the cheeks, for example, you definitely need more. And on the other hand, we really need to be careful. We do not want to create a real child with a real anatomical structure. We want to create the impression of a real child, but with the improved and perfected facial structures of a typical Final Fantasy character. And as you know, normal human beings, and also Noctis in his adult form, he doesn't have any fat particles. He has a very clean chin line, and this is something that I definitely need to keep in mind when crafting this sculpt. And this is where it's really, really tricky. I mean, normally the doll crafters, they have photographies and, you know, sometimes videos of a real child that they use for reference. And what we do, what I always do, is to walk the very fine line between the fantasy perfection and the realistic, you know, features. So, yeah. That's sometimes really the most tricky part, because you want a child that looks like a real child and not like a doll, but on the other hand has this perfected, beautiful anatomy. So for all of you who are, you know, new to this and have just joined, thank you so much for joining Create and, you know, accompanying me as a cosplayer and crafter on my journey of creating a life-size Noctis Lucis Calum doll. We're currently working on the head. I have, you know, started working on hands and feet, and I'll definitely show you the process in the next episode. We're now getting down to the base of the sculpt. And again, I have to deal with clay that is too hot. And I don't know how you guys feel. For me, new projects, you know, are always a cool thing, but you know, there are always those projects, those special projects that, you know, pushes you to the edge of what you can do currently, and, you know, which is a real game changer for you. And for me personally, it's this particular project because I've never crafted such a big doll before, and I've never done all those steps, you know, alone, and really, you know, crafted a 7-year-old child. So for me, this is a perfect opportunity to grow as an artist and improve and enjoy, you know, learning new things. And you always learn, even from your failures. That is something that I find very, very, you know, valuable and important to say in this channel. If you ever find yourself in a situation like this, or if you're watching this and, you know, just remember this one project that your heart really hangs on and you are not sure whether you should do it or not, if you think you're not good enough, try it. Please do so. You can only win. And if you don't make it in the first try, you will, you know, save the valuable information that you got from your failure, and, you know, it will be your path to success in the second try. So I think that's what's making, you know, cosplaying and creating so awesome for me, that you're always improving, no matter how good you are, or no matter how good you think others are. Every artist that I admired personally, that were my role models, that I talked with, told me exactly the same story. Never give up, just try it out. Sometimes start, you know, with a new technique, with a simple model, break it down to a very small project, and then take this, you know, success story and evolve constantly and slowly over there. So I think personally, I hope, you know, that this crafting channel also, you know, is a kind of inspiration for all of those who are not sure whether to start their project of the heart or not. Do it. You can do it. I know you can. And don't forget, guys, you're not alone. If you're having any troubles or problems or questions, you can, especially when it's related to what I'm doing, you can, you know, ask me your questions in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them. So, as you see, I'm now starting to generally work over the whole thing, trying to smoothen a little bit the surfaces, not, you know, nothing too fancy here, just trying to find out where I should put on some more clay, here for example, because it's too thin, and where I can use the clay that I already have and put it to another located area in the surrounding that needs fixing, like here. You don't need to put on so many material at first. Just slowly and steadily walk your way over and you'll see it will work out just fine. Yeah, Wesen, I really remember your Vincent, and I have to say I was so impressed with seeing all the amazing details. I know, and you know, I admired your armor crafting for some time now, and your Vincent Valentine. It was amazing, really, so detailed. All the fingers, you guys need to check this out. She's doing really, really cool stuff. And Wesen's Costumes is one of the armor crafters that I can definitely recommend. Very kind person and very, very skilled. And this is also something that Create is about. We will not only show you what, you know, we craft here, what I craft here, but you know, I'm also very looking forward interviewing and inviting other talented artists from all around, you know, like cosplayers and tailors and whatever, you name it, and present them to you and show you the diversity and the whole potential of the crafting world. So that is what I'm really looking forward to in the future. And I have to say, I'm really, really happy with the progress here. This is really cool. It's going much faster than I expected, actually. As you see, perfect example. It's always something new to learn. And actually, Wesen's Costumes in the chat just said something very, very valuable. You know, I see so many cosplayers that focus on only doing their own content, and that's okay. It's not, you know, a bad thing to do. But I think when I've learned something over the past years, then that together you can create so wonderful and cool things, and you can make things possible that you could never do alone. May it be the working time, you know, that the project takes, or the money that it takes. So if you want to step over to my Facebook site, White Raven Cosplay and Artwork, you will see that especially within the last 2 years, I've spent much time, you know, supporting other cosplay artists in my private Cosplayer for Cosplayers project, which means that I covered the cost for collaborative photo shootings, and I helped them out with makeup, with wigs, or whatever they needed, because I thought they were so talented and they needed to, you know, a little shout out, because like so many cool artists and cosplayers around the world, they were quite, you know, unnoticed in the worldwide internet. So that was my personal passion to, you know, discover and support those other cosplayers. And if you look at those pictures and collaborative projects, you will see that it was a win-win situation for everybody involved, because the photographers, you know, the tailors, the cosplayers, the makeup artists, everybody was able to bring in his personal talent and then multiply it into a beautiful, huge project. And together we were able to make our dreams come true, and you know, make a cool photo shooting that nobody of us would have been able to do alone. So my tip for you, and the very valuable statement that Wesen just made is, you know, work together, you know, get some friends and collaborate. You know, if you see another artist that you like, don't be jealous, but instead try to contact him or her, ask him if they're interested in working with you. And sometimes you will be surprised by what you see, very positively surprised. So this is something that I've learned and experienced all over in the last years, that there are so many wonderful people out there, and collaborating is so much fun. So, let's see. Yeah, sometimes it gets sticky. We'll just remove the rubber band. But I don't want to pull away the sculpt, because I don't want to waste time on putting it onto the wooden base again. So what's actually very interesting about human anatomy is that you can basically divide the sculpt into the facial part and the rest of the brain. So that fine line begins here, approximately here. And as you see, the younger the child is, the more mass you have behind the actual face. So of course Noctis will also get not only a head, but also the rest of his anatomical upper structures. So some part will go away here, and we have, you know, calculated that already, or I've calculated that already. So if I need to get the space for the rest, then, for example, I can see how many materials I might need to add up later on. But for now, let's stick with that. It's perfectly fine. And as I said, we just want the first layer to get an overall impression and doing some corrections. And because aluminium foil is quite stubborn, don't worry if you don't get it perfectly symmetrical. As you see, the scalp is not symmetrical at all right now. Don't worry about that. And we'll deal with that later. We can add materials and clay, meaning clay. We can add, you know, clay to fill in those gaps and smoothen it all out. It's just basically to give us a feeling, a basic understanding how, you know, the final result should look like, where the eyes are located, where the nose is located, and where the chin is located. This is very, very important. As you see, I personally prefer at this stage not to use any fancy tools, but my most sensitive tool, which are, as a crafter, my fingertips, because I can feel the unevenness of the material and I will know instantly where to add and where to remove the clay. But as I said in the beginning, every crafter is doing things differently. There is not, you know, the one golden path of doing things. Every crafter has its own way of doing, and this is totally fine. So feel free to discover your own techniques that work for you, and let me know if you have any tips and what has worked for you so far in crafting. I have to admit that this is actually one of my favorite steps. Creating the head is... it has something magical. Also a good tip, always, you know, move your sculpt around, or what you're crafting, your crafting object, and, you know, view it from different angles, so you can see flaws that you might have missed from the front. You will see from the side. I do a lot of looking above from this perspective, because then I see if it's even or not, which is not, but that's not a surprise. We're just at the very beginning, as I said. I will correct this at a later stage. So, with finishing this basic code, we're slowly approaching the end of this show. I'm very, very happy to, you know, being able to show you how to start crafting such a huge project, and I'm really looking forward showing you the progress in future episodes. And I'm taking the chance again to even and smoothen some areas out. And don't worry if the aluminium foil will shine through. For now, we will be adding so much more layers later on. I promise you, it won't be visible. So, that was it for today. Thank you so much, guys, for staying with me and supporting me on my way to crafting a life-size, realistic Noctis Lucis Calum doll from Final Fantasy XV. Thank you so much for TeamSpeak and my team for all your base. We see each other again, hopefully, next Wednesday at 4 p.m. So, thank you so very much. Stay tuned and let's rock the next show. Bye-bye.
Connected.